So let me ask you something. When you get paid, what's the first thing you do? Not what you plan to do, what you actually do. Most people don't sit down. They don't think. They don't make a decision. They just continue their day. You're at work. Phone buzzes. You glance at it. Paycheck hit. And that's it. You don't celebrate. You don't panic. You just move on. Later that day, you stop for gas. Fill the tank. Swipe the card. No big deal. On the way home, maybe you grab groceries. Nothing crazy, just the usual stuff. Then dinner, maybe takeout, maybe something quick. And a couple days later, you open your bank app again and think, wait, how did this already drop so fast? That moment right there, that's the moment nobody ever explains. Because nothing went wrong. You didn't buy anything stupid. You didn't do anything reckless. You just followed your normal routine. And somehow, that routine keeps producing the same result. A paycheck that shows up and a month that still feels tight. I started noticing this everywhere. At Walmart, at Target, at the gas station on a Friday afternoon. People just got paid. You can tell. But you can also tell they don't feel ahead. That's what made me curious. If payday is supposed to help, why does it never seem to change anything? Why does it feel like relief for a moment, then pressure all over again? I'm Mike. I've asked myself that question a lot, because I lived that cycle for years. And here's what I learned. The problem isn't how much you make, and it's not about being bad with money. The real issue is what happens right after the paycheck hits. Most people run the same payday routine without even realizing they have one. And that routine quietly decides whether the rest of the month feels calm or fragile. That's the trap. But once you see it, you can change it. And that's where this gets interesting. Here's the thing most people don't realize. This isn't a you problem. It's not a personality thing. It's not a discipline thing. It's everywhere. You see it at work. People talk about payday like it's a checkpoint. Just gotta make it to Friday. As soon as I get paid, I'm good. But then Friday comes, and nothing actually changes. Same stress, same tight feeling, same quiet math in your head. I started paying attention to how common this is. At the office, at the grocery store, standing in line at Target on a Saturday morning, people aren't acting reckless. They're acting normal. They're buying food, they're filling up their car, they're paying bills. And yet, almost everyone feels like their money is always one step behind. Here's a simple number that puts this in perspective. Most Americans get paid every 2 weeks. That means 26 paychecks a year. Now think about that. That's 26 chances a year to get ahead or fall back into the same cycle. And for most people, every single one of those paychecks gets handled the exact same way. No pause, no reset, no intention, just autopilot. Another number that matters. A huge percentage of people can't cover a $500 surprise without stress. Not because they're irresponsible, but because their money never has a plan. It shows up and immediately starts reacting to life. That's the key word, reacting. Rent reacts, bills react, groceries react, gas reacts. By the time you're done reacting, the paycheck is already spoken for. And nobody ever sits you down and says, hey, this is normal, and this is why it keeps happening. Instead, people blame themselves. I should be better with money. I need a raise. I just need to try harder next month. But notice something. Next month always looks exactly like this one. That's not coincidence. That's a system. A routine you didn't choose, but run anyway. That's the trap. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need to overhaul your entire life to fix this. You don't need to track every penny. You don't need to become a finance person. You just need to change what happens first. Because the first moves after payday decide everything that comes after. And once you see that, you stop feeling behind and start feeling in control. But this is where most explanations go wrong. Because the next thing people usually say sounds good and feels comfortable and is completely wrong. At this point, most people think they know the answer. They're already nodding along thinking, okay, I get it. I just need to be more careful. I need to stop buying dumb stuff. I need more discipline. That sounds reasonable. It also sounds wrong. Because if discipline fixed this, it would have worked by now. Think about it. Most people try after payday, for a few days at least. They skip one coffee. They say no to one thing. They tell themselves, I'll be good this month. And then life shows up. You're driving home. Traffic's bad. You're tired. You pull into a drive-thru without thinking. Later that week, you're at Costco. You go in for one thing, you come out with a cart full of good deals. None of that feels reckless. It feels earned. That's why the usual advice doesn't stick. Just budget better. Just say no more often. Just track everything. That advice assumes the problem is willpower. It's not. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't choose how they use their paycheck. They let the month choose for them. By the time you're making spending decisions, the game is already half over. Bills are waiting. Subscriptions are lined up. Life already has plans for your money. So when someone tells you, just save what's left at the end, they're basically saying, win a race after it's already finished. That's the break. That's where the logic snaps. Because the problem isn't spending, it's timing. Everything important happens before you feel tempted, before you feel tired, before you start justifying things. But nobody talks about that part. They talk about cutting back. They talk about saying no. They don't talk about setting the month up before the month starts spending for you. Let me put it this way. If you wait until the end of the month to save, you're relying on leftover money. And leftover money is rare. Not because people are irresponsible, but because money is excellent at finding places to go. That's the trap. And once you see it, the whole discipline conversation feels kind of silly. Because this isn't about being stronger, it's about being earlier. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If timing is the real issue, then changing when things happen matters more than changing what you buy. And that leads straight into how the system actually works. So let's slow this down for a second and actually look at how this works. Not in theory, in real life. Picture a normal paycheck. It hits your checking account on Friday morning. You don't move it, you don't touch it. But behind the scenes, things are already lining up. Rent is waiting. The car payment is waiting. Insurance is waiting. Subscriptions are waiting. They're not optional. They're scheduled. So your paycheck shows up and immediately gets surrounded. Nothing dramatic happens. No alert, no warning, it's quiet. By Monday, half that money already has a job. Now here's the part that matters. Most people think this is fine because it's all necessary stuff. And yes, rent matters, food matters, transportation matters, but the order matters too. Because the system most people run does one thing really well. It makes sure everyone else gets paid first. Landlord first, bank first, car company first, utility companies first. You come last. Think about that. You work all month, you earn the money, and somehow you're the last one in line. I didn't notice this until I started watching patterns. At the bank, people standing there on payday, checking balances, asking questions like, why does it feel like this never changes? At the DMV, someone stressed, annoyed, trying to deal with a fee they didn't see coming. Same story. The system doesn't care how tired you are. It doesn't care if it was a hard month. It just runs, automatically. And most people plug into it, without ever setting rules. Here's a better way to picture it. Imagine your paycheck is like a highway merge during rush hour. The moment your money shows up, everything else is already on the road. Bills are merging in fast. Payments have the right of way. Subscriptions don't even slow down. You're trying to enter last, with no lane and no signal. So you squeeze in wherever there's space. That space is what people call whatever's left. And that explains why money feels stressful. Because you're not driving, you're reacting. You're adjusting speed, slamming brakes, hoping nothing unexpected shows up. That's the system. And it explains why budgeting feels exhausting. Because you're trying to control traffic after rush hour already started. That's the break. That's where people feel stuck. Then advice shows up. Just track your spending. Just cut back. Just be more aware. But awareness doesn't give you the right of way. Timing does. Ask yourself this. When does saving usually happen? After bills, after spending, after life. Which means saving is optional by design. That's why it fails. Not because people don't care, but because the system guarantees there's barely any room left. Mini recap. The system lets everything merge first and hands you the leftovers. That's the trap. Now here's the part most people don't expect. You don't need to fight this system. You don't need to cancel your life. You don't need to become extreme. You just need to change. Who gets the right of way? And when you do, the pressure drops fast. Because once you merge first, everything else adjusts. But before we talk about how to do that, you need to see what happens when this system keeps running untouched. Because the damage isn't loud. It shows up quietly, 1 month at a time. And that's what we need to look at next. Here's what the system actually does to people. Not loudly, not in a way you can point at. It shows up in small decisions that don't look like money decisions. You're at work midweek. Someone mentions overtime next month. Not mandatory, just an option. And your first thought isn't, do I want the extra time? It's, I probably should. Not because you're ambitious, because the month feels tight. That's a consequence. Another one. Your phone battery starts acting weird, drains faster, gets hot. You tell yourself it's fine. You lower the brightness. You close apps. Not because you love that phone, because replacing it would create a ripple you don't feel like dealing with. That hesitation didn't come from nowhere. Here's another place it shows up. Mail. You get something that's not a bill. A letter from insurance, from the bank, from the city. And before you even open it, your body tenses. Not fear, just readiness. Because anything unexpected means rearranging the month. That's what fragility feels like. You see it in conversations too. Someone at work talks about switching jobs, better role, better hours. And your first reaction isn't excitement, it's risk. What if the timing's bad? What if there's a gap? What if it messes things up? When money is tight, opportunity feels dangerous. That's a big one. Another scene. Saturday morning. You're running errands. Oil change, haircut, normal stuff. But you stack them carefully. Not in the same weekend. Not in the same week. Because spreading them out makes the month feel safer. Again, nothing reckless happened. You're just managing around pressure that never fully leaves. Here's the question that explains all of it. What happens when there's no margin and real life keeps happening? You stop thinking forward. You think sideways. You adjust. You delay. You contain. Over time, that changes you. You stop seeing money as a tool. You see it as something that needs babysitting. That's exhausting. Mini recap. This system doesn't make you broke. It makes you careful in all the wrong places. That's the trap. And here's the part most people miss. Living like this for years doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects your identity. You start believing stability is fragile, that progress is risky, that calm is temporary. And once that belief settles in, it shapes every decision after that. Because now, it's not just the system running your month. It's the story you're telling yourself about what's possible. And that's what we need to unpack next. Here's where this stops being about money and starts being about how people see themselves. Because after running this system long enough, something subtle happens. You don't just feel tight. You start acting smaller. Not on purpose. Not consciously. It shows up in how you talk to yourself. You catch phrases like, I'm just not a money person. I've never been good with finances. I'll deal with it later. Those sound harmless. They're not. They're conclusions. And once you reach them, you stop trying to change the system because you think you are the problem. That's the psychological trap. Here's a way to picture it. Imagine walking around every day with a backpack you didn't pack yourself. At first, it's light. You barely notice it. But every month, a small weight gets added. A payment here, a commitment there, another obligation you didn't question. You adapt. You walk a little slower. You rest more often. You stop taking longer routes. Eventually, carrying the weight feels normal. And when someone says, hey, you don't have to carry all that, your first reaction isn't relief, it's doubt. Yeah, but that's just how life is. That's what this system does. It convinces people that constant pressure is adulthood, that feeling cautious is maturity, that being careful is responsible. So people build an identity around surviving the month. They get good at it. They know exactly when bills hit. They know how low the balance can go before things get uncomfortable. That's not financial skill. That's adaptation. And here's the dangerous part. Once your identity locks into careful, opportunity feels reckless. Saving feels unrealistic. Planning feels risky. Calm feels temporary. You don't think, how do I change this? You think, how do I not mess this up? That shift matters because people don't rise to what they want. They fall to what they believe is normal. Here's a question worth asking. If nothing is technically wrong, why does it always feel like you're one step away from stress? That's not income. That's structure. And structure shapes identity. When your system always puts you last, you internalize that position. You stop seeing money as something that works for you. You see it as something you manage carefully so it doesn't turn on you. Mini recap. Run a fragile system long enough, and you start believing fragility is who you are. That's the trap. But here's the good news. Identities built by systems can be changed by systems. You don't need motivation. You don't need a personality overhaul. You just need proof. And proof comes from repetition. When the same payday starts producing a calmer week, then a calmer month, then a calmer year, your self-image adjusts. Not because you forced it, because the pressure left. And once that happens, everything feels different. Choices feel lighter. Decisions feel quieter. The month stops feeling like a test. And that leads us to the final piece. Because once you understand the trap, and once you see how it shaped you, the only question left is what you do next. So here's the moment where everything clicks. Because if you look back at everything we talked about, this was never about cutting coffee. It was never about willpower. It was never about being better with money. It was about one simple truth. Your paycheck was never the problem. The order was. Most people let payday run in default mode. Money comes in, life grabs it, bills react, emotions decide what's left, nothing explodes. Nothing feels wrong. The month just quietly disappears. Again. Now here's the part that actually changes things. Picture your next payday. Not some perfect future month, not after a raise, not when things calm down. The next one. The money hits your account, and instead of scrolling, instead of spending, instead of reacting, you pause. Just once. And you make one first move. Not a budget, not a spreadsheet, just a decision. You move a small amount of money out of reach of the month. Before rent sees it, before subscriptions touch it, before life starts pulling. That one move changes everything. Because now the month isn't deciding for you, you decided first. Think of it like this. Payday is the opening move in a chess game. Most people don't play it. They let the board play them. They spend the whole month reacting to moves they never set up. But the moment you move first, the board changes. The pressure drops. The noise quiets down. The month feels less hostile. Not because you got rich, because you stopped letting money surprise you. That's the real shift. You stop asking, can I afford this? And start asking, did I already decide what this paycheck is for? That question alone puts you ahead of most people. I'm not telling you to never enjoy your money. I'm not telling you to live extreme. I'm telling you to stop letting payday happen to you. Because when every paycheck has a first move, the rest of the month becomes easier by default. Here's the line I want you to remember. Money doesn't change your life when you make more of it. It changes your life when it stops surprising you. That's the checkmate. I'm Mike. I don't feel ahead because I make crazy money. I feel ahead because my paycheck knows what it's supposed to do before my emotions show up. Do that consistently, and payday stops being a tease. It becomes a reset. And that's when things finally start moving. Before you go, there's something you need to see next. Because a lot of people think the solution to all this is just making more money. A raise. 6 figures. Finally feeling comfortable. But there's a reason so many people hit $100,000 in their 30s and still feel broke, stressed, and behind. I break that down in the next video. Why what used to feel like a big salary now feels like minimum wage. Watch that next. It connects directly to what we just talked about.